Yeah, well, so hopefully in 10 years we'll be past this idea of questioning democracy, but who knows?
Well,
Again, that's
yeah,
just-
that was another, layer of challenge with all of
Yeah,
this.
no, how much of that did you get pushed back on? Like people, like, you talked about people mistrusting the census, but what about people mistrusting the process itself? Like you're registered, like I said, I think at the state level there were questions. On your level, I thought there were many, many less questions, but there is that general sense of democracy's fixed. I mean, we have the former president talking about democracy's failed. Where did that play into your process locally?
I think we definitely did hear some of that. There were some, chatter on Twitter about, that's, they only consider where incumbents live, or they only do this. And we had some people sort of get up there and sort of say it's fixed or not going to do anything.
I heard some of that.
We did hear some of that, but it wasn't the overall sense of it. I think we had people who came up each time and were talking about what really mattered to them, and a lot of people didn't focus on that. And I think a lot of those hearings were just that. They were hearing. We spent a lot of time listening to people.
Right.
And I also felt compelled a lot of time, even though a public hearing really isn't about answering questions, but because we were in such intimate spaces in some cases, that we just felt really compelled to have that conversation with people, even if it was hard and they were pushing back.
Yeah.
So we did hear it. It wasn't the sort of overwhelming in any way.
Right.
And I just think it wasn't, definitely didn't ignore it when we heard it, but it was just more of, well, if we just continue with the process, that's open, that's transparent, that we're saying these things, we can move forward. I think that, so.
I thought some of the hardest testimony that came was when, and I don't remember the exacts of it, but when a person would say, the numbers that you're working with are wrong, right? I live in this community, and I know, for instance, that there's not as many people, Hispanics, living in this area as they're saying. Yet the numbers are not something you can correct, right? The numbers are the ones you were given from this. So whether the census got it right or wrong, these are the numbers you have to use by law. And that sounded like a difficult conversation to have.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Kim and Ryan say that's a really difficult conversation for them to have, and they're the experts who actually work with the Census Bureau to ensure proper counts, right? So those were difficult different conversations. Yeah. Because I do understand people's frustrations, and I do understand that people felt nervous to take the census. So I think that plays into it, and people say that they have this level of distress with the census because they feel like they're not represented, so then they don't see it in the numbers. So we spent a couple of the hearings going over the racial data. We didn't really dive deep into one interesting part of the data, which is the people who say they're one or more or two or more races, which is where you see a lot of that change. So if you move some of that sort of back into the categories, you see those categories rise. Right. So some of it is that people are changing how they're classifying themselves. Right. So they might say, I am Black and I am Asian and I am this. Right. And so then that moves to a different category. So it artificially lowers these other categories. And some of that is people are seeing themselves for the first time on these new census forms. Right. Some of that is people are feeling proud and more engaged to say those things.
And they want to acknowledge maybe part of their history that their family hasn't acknowledged in generations, like Indigenous American, which something might have hidden for a lot of the 20th century, but now you can step out and claim that identity.
Yeah, so I don't think that's a large part of the data being off, as some people think, but I think that's part of it. Right. And then, just this week we did hear that the Census Bureau has said that there was undercounts, and there has historically been undercounts, and that we know that it persisted this time. It was statistically different and larger than in 2010, but it's not surprising, but still shocking, I guess.
Do you think that undercount, when they said that, they were talking about Rhode Island at all, or do you think they were talking about elsewhere in the country?
So it's national level. Yep. And we know that Rhode Island and Providence in particular did see population increases. Yeah. So it's sort of hard to balance that. And we know the sections of the city that grew in population are places with heavily more Hispanic or,
Right,
or
right.
that. So we won't know for sure unless
Yeah.
we see that. I do know that Rhode Island has historically undercounted very young children,
Interesting.
and adults of those places. So I can't tell you the exact ranges, but I know that there's there has been. We see it here, but I don't know the magnitude of it, I guess, is the